I, at the age of 70, transmigrated into the body of the male lead's evil grandmother in a tragic novel. The system said, "You must follow the plot." I put on my reading glasses. "What do you mean by follow the plot?" The system hesitated. It means you have to abuse him. Right now, throw the stool at his face. Tell him to get lost." I averted my gaze. At this moment, the male lead was still a half-grown teenager, skinny as a stalk of wheat, dressed in thin, shabby clothes, glaring at me with hatred in his eyes. I turned around and walked into the kitchen. The male lead gritted his teeth. "Are you going to grab a knife and kill me?" "You old hag, I'll take you down with me." "You're too skinny," I sighed, expertly lighting the stove. "Let me make you something to eat." "I'm a grandmother." What kind of grandmother could possibly resist fattening up her grandson? Blue flames flickered in the gas stove. I turned around to grab a pot, only to realize, where's the pot? Why is there no pot? Nisushui watched my actions and let out a cold sneer. "Hypocrite. Didn't you say you wanted to starve me to death yesterday? What, have you come up with a new way to torture me? You old hag." He called me old hag again and again. I sighed and raised my hand, intending to lightly pat his head. "You don't even call me grandma, no respect at all." But before my hand even touched Nisushui, he jumped away like I had something dirty on me. "Get lost." I froze for a moment. I asked the system, "Why is he acting like this?" "Haven't you read the novel?" The system sounded puzzled. "We only bind people who've read the original storyline before entering the world. There shouldn't be any mistakes." The system explained that this mission world was based on a novel called The Yandere Villain's Beloved Palm Treasure, a wife-chasing crematorium novel. I thought about it for a while before finally remembering. Yes, I had read it. It was my granddaughter who recommended it to me. But I had completely forgotten the contents. That's just how it is when you're old. Things that happened yesterday are already fuzzy today. Everything feels like it's covered in a layer of haze. The system sighed heavily and muttered, "Binding an old lady for missions. I wonder if this counts as elder abuse. Let me explain it again." Its words were interrupted by the sound of someone pounding fiercely on the door. 3 burly men barged in impatiently. Their height and size made the already cramped house feel even smaller. The leader pointed at my nose, looking fierce and menacing. "Old hag, where's the money? Your son and daughter-in-law ran off with our money without saying a word. That's our blood, sweat, and tears. If you can't cough up $1 million today, I'll take your damned life." Nishui frowned and stepped forward. "Last time, you said it was $5 million. The villa has already been mortgaged to you, and everything valuable in the house was taken away by you. Isn't that enough?" "Kid, you remember pretty well," the burly man sneered. "The $5 million was last time's debt. With interest, it's now $6 million. If you can't pay up..." He took a step closer and suddenly grabbed for Nisushui's shoulder. "You're a pretty good-looking boy. There are some bosses who love someone like you." Nisushui was slender, completely defenseless in front of the burly man with a face full of scars. The system said, this is the first step for Nisushui to turn into a lunatic. He will be dragged to the boss, tortured for half a month, and then escape back. What kind of garbage plot is this? I walked into the kitchen. Nisushui's gaze was calm, but the corner of his mouth lifted in a mocking smile. The next second, I charged out of the kitchen with a knife in hand, letting out a howl as I stood protectively in front of him. "If you want to take my grandson, you'll have to kill me first." "Anyway, I'm just an old woman with a worthless life. I'm not afraid of dying." The blade glinted brightly, reflecting the startled expression of the burly man. He stumbled back a few steps, panic written all over his face. "Hurry! Restrain her!" But I wielded 2 kitchen knives, slicing through the air with ferocity. The sharp arcs of the blades whistled as I swung them, scaring everyone into keeping their distance. I mustered all my strength and shouted at the top of my lungs, "Nisushui, go shut the door! Don't let them escape! I've long since stopped wanting to live. You came at the right time. Today, we'll die together." Holding the knife, I charged at the burly men without hesitation. They acted tough, but deep down, they were cowards. Seeing my expression, as if I wasn't bluffing, they all jumped aside like frightened rabbits and bolted out of the room. They even left their shoes behind. Nisushui stood by the door, his head lowered, staring at me with a hint of surprise in his eyes. I placed the kitchen knife at my feet and took a deep breath. That's it? I hadn't even gotten to the part where I rolled on the ground with the knife yet. The system spoke timidly. Host, follow the plot. Plot? I replied. Plot my ass. Actually, it's not my fault that I'm so angry. The system actually expected me to just stand by and watch as a child was taken away and tormented. How could anyone even say such a thing? How could anyone even do such a thing? Fuming, I turned to look at Nisu Shui. His frail figure looked like he hadn't eaten in 3 days, and that just made me even angrier. Children should be chubby, rosy, round, and full of hope. I pulled out my phone to check my balance, then grabbed Nisu Shui and headed out. We walked into a KFC. Skilled and efficient, I ordered 4 burgers and 2 cups of cola. Pushing the tray toward him, I said, "Eat up, kid." Nisu Shui didn't move. He stared blankly at the hamburger, his gaze slowly sliding up to my face. In a soft voice, he said, "You wouldn't do this before." Feeling guilty, I rubbed my nose. Grandma learned how to use a smartphone now. When my granddaughter was little, she loved eating hamburgers. Back then, I didn't know how to order food on my phone, so I always ended up buying them at a higher price without using any coupons. But it was obvious Nisu Shui wasn't talking about that. He lowered his eyes, his long eyelashes fluttering like a bird's wings. "You wouldn't buy burgers for me before. Yesterday, you said I was the bastard child of a mistress, that I didn't deserve to eat, and told me to starve. The day before that, you threw the food on the ground and told me to lick it up like a dog." I was shocked and quickly stopped him, seriously saying, "That was Grandma's fault. It won't happen again." I wasn't sure if Nisu Shui had taken my words to heart, but he picked up the hamburger and took a bite. There were only the 2 of us in the burger shop. I picked up my phone and looked at the date and realized that it was Wednesday today. Wednesday. Why wasn't Nisu Shui at school? As soon as that thought entered my mind, my mouth had already asked the question before my brain could catch up. Nishui's brows furrowed slightly. He lifted his gaze, staring at me intently. "Why didn't I go to school? Don't you know?" In that instant, everything fell into complete silence. I let out an awkward laugh while frantically calling out to the system in my mind. But unfortunately, my mind was blank. Nisu Shui's gaze clung to me like a shadow, observing every tiny movement I made. He finished his burger in just a few bites and calmly spoke. "You are not her. You are not Shugiji." Those words struck like a sudden thunderclap. The excuse I had just come up with got stuck in my throat, and I stared at him, dumbfounded. Huh? How did he figure it out? This kid? How is he so smart? Nisu Shui glanced at my expression, picked up the second hamburger, and deftly unwrapped it with his slender fingers. He ate quickly. Nisu Shui said, "Sugiji was a university professor before she retired, always cared about appearances. She would never swing knives at those people. And she definitely wouldn't bring me to eat hamburgers because she absolutely hates junk food like this. The last time I secretly bought a hamburger, she threw it off the building. And if you really were Shugiji, you wouldn't have asked me why I wasn't going to school. Because when I got into a fight at school, she was the one who dragged me to withdraw from school." I was stunned, completely dumbfounded. Nisu Shui took a sip of cola, stood up, and nodded slightly toward me. "Whoever you are, thank you. Goodbye." I sat there in shock, my mind a complete mess. Without thinking, I called out to him, "Wait, where are you going?" Nisu Shui's expression remained calm. "To fend for myself." I sucked in a sharp breath. Sit down. How old are you? At your age, no one's even going to hire you as child labor." He didn't move. I grabbed his sleeve and pressed him back into his seat, sighing. What's the word for it? Oh, right, transmigrated. I chose to hide the part about the system. Telling Nisu Shui that he was actually a character in a novel, with his entire life pre-planned as part of the plot, felt far too cruel. Before I transmigrated, I was 70 years old and had a granddaughter. I gestured toward Nisu Shui. "She's older than you, in Kull." Just then, an electronic voice suddenly boomed like a thunderclap. "Host, what are you talking about?" Amid its piercing wails, I forced out the final word, "leggy." The system broke down. It said, "I was gone for just a moment and you spilled everything like that? Aren't you afraid of any consequences? Did you even think? What if failing the mission means death? What then? You. I chuckled softly, cutting it off mid-sentence. I've lived for 70 years, I said gently. My kids have their own families now, and my granddaughter has been admitted to college. This life of mine, I have no regrets. The system swallowed all the words it was about to say and let out a sigh. Fine. I guess this family just can't function without me. I just disappeared for a moment to ask the main god. Turns out, it's fine if you don't follow the plot, as long as the ending remains the same. Me, what ending? System, the male and female leads live happily ever after. Though I had no idea who the female lead was, I focused on the 3 words, happily ever after. I stood up and turned to Nisu, saying, "No need to fend for yourself. Come with me." Nishu's gaze grew wary. "Where to?" "Step 1 to happiness," I said. "We move house first." The original place had been visited by debt collectors, so we definitely couldn't live there anymore. Fortunately, though, Nisu was pretty skilled with his phone. He quickly found a small apartment online, a 2-bedroom, 1 living room unit. It was only 50 square meters, and the rent was incredibly cheap. The landlord was a kind person. Seeing that we were just an orphan and an old woman, he agreed to cut the deposit in half and let us pay every 3 months. But even so, the rent completely drained all my savings, leaving only $800 in my pocket. Seeing this, Nishu pressed his lips tightly together into a straight line and said, "I can go work." I was so angry I knocked him on the forehead. "You little rascal, are you that eager to go work? Anyway, I'm not going to school anymore." "Bullshit." That forceful declaration seemed to scare Nisu. He widened his eyes in shock. Realizing I had lost my composure, I took a deep breath but still couldn't help nagging, "How can you not go to school? In this day and age, it's hard to do anything without an education." Back in my time, I wasn't like the original Shuguiji. I only had an elementary school education and had spent my whole life farming the land. But Nisu probably didn't want to hear all that. I swallowed the rest of my words and patted his shoulder. "Come on, let's go. Grandma will take you to school." Under Nisu guidance, we soon arrived at the middle school he attended. Parking the bicycle at the school gate, he led me through a maze of hallways, and at last we arrived at the educational director's office. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. A stern-faced female teacher sat inside, her expression unreadable. Hearing the sound, she raised her head to look at me. "I'm Nisu grandmother." I quickly forced a smile and rubbed my hands together. "I'm here to ask if the child can return to school." To ensure nothing would go wrong, I brought along the last 800 yuan I had left. The female teacher shook her head and said, "Nisu was involved in a fight at school, and he broke a classmate's nose. Not long ago, it was you who brought him here to go through the withdrawal procedures." I turned to glance at Nisu. He was leaning against the doorframe, his eyes downcast, lost in thought. I was at a loss for words for a moment. All I could do was pull out the small cloth pouch in my pocket, unraveling it layer by layer, and try to hand it to the teacher. He truly realized his mistake this time. "Teacher, please give the child another chance." The female teacher pushed the money back to me and still gently but firmly refused. What should I do now? My eyes stung, and my knees instinctively wanted to bend, but a pair of hands held me firmly in place. Nisu gripped my shoulders tightly, his knuckles turning pale with the force, and his lower lip was bitten so hard it turned white. "It's fine. I don't have to go to school. This child, does he even understand what he is saying?" I was just an old rural woman. My whole life had been spent toiling the land. I didn't have any grand vision, just a simple belief that education was the only way out. I didn't want Nisu life to waste away like this. The female teacher broke the silence. She looked at my expression, then glanced at Nisu and let out a deep sigh. Let him come back and try for one day. Stepping out of the school gate, I could barely contain my smile. But soon enough, a new problem presented itself. What about Nisu living expenses? A boy of his age could eat a lot, and he was so skinny, he needed to eat more meat. Then there's the cost of books, school uniforms. What on earth can 800 yuan cover? I looked up at the sky with a long sigh and asked the system if it had any ideas for making money. The system said, "It depends on the host's own efforts. If I were still the original Shuguiji, I could still teach or tutor, but now I didn't know how to do anything." Frowning, I pushed the bicycle forward, debating whether I should work as a cleaner or in a factory. This body was much younger than my original one, probably in its early 50s, and still relatively healthy. I just wasn't sure if I could handle assembly line work. As I walked, a hint of green entered my line of sight. I shook the plastic bag in my bike basket, raised my eyebrows, and eagerly approached. With swift movements, I stuffed the plastic bottles into the bag. The system let out a shrill, almost desperate scream. "Host, what are you doing? Don't dig through trash bins. Don't pick up bottles." I ignored it completely. Just then, two girls came by holding big express delivery boxes in their hands. They had initially intended to toss them into the trash can, but upon seeing me, they exchanged glances and handed the cardboard boxes to me instead. I smiled gratefully. "Thanks." 2 yuan per pound for bottles, 70 cents per pound for cardboard. "Every little bit adds up," I said to the system. "It's a way to make money too." System. It once again fell into a long, profound silence. I cheerfully repeated my actions, and in my eyes, the plastic bottles and cardboard boxes seemed to transform into little points of light, coming together to form Nisue's tuition fees, Nisushue's living expenses. I felt brimming with motivation. "What are you doing?" I already said." I paused, realizing that this wasn't the system's voice. Nisushue quickly walked up and grabbed the bag from my hands. I was stunned. "Aren't you supposed to be at school?" He clutched the bag tightly, his voice trembling. "Why? Why what? Why are you picking up bottles?" I smiled at him, trying to keep my tone soft. I'm just doing it for fun." "It's because of me, right?" Nishue interrupted me, his amber eyes glaring at me stubbornly, sharp like a blade. "You're picking up bottles to pay for my schooling." "Why are you doing this? Why are you so good to me?" I had never seen Nisushe so emotional. Ever since I transmigrated, Nisushe had always been cold and indifferent. But now, his voice was breaking. "I'm just a burden. If you abandon me, you could live a much better life. Shugiji planned to do that anyway. We're just strangers." For a moment, only the sound of the wind remained around us. I opened my mouth, but it took a long time for me to find my voice. "What are you saying, child? How could we possibly be strangers? I'm your grandmother." That one sentence hit him like a heavy blow. Nisushe covered his face, his body swaying unsteadily. He broke down, crouching on the ground, his voice low, like a taut string about to snap. The sobs he tried to suppress leaked through his fingers. "I don't want to go to that school anymore. They bully me. Grandma, they bully me." Nishue transferred to this middle school 6 months ago. He was good-looking, excelled academically, and was well-liked by the teachers. There were even girls who secretly confessed their feelings to him. This stirred up dissatisfaction among a few of the school's big shots. They felt that Nisushe had stolen their spotlight and decided to teach him a lesson. After school, they cornered Nisushe in an alley and gave him a beating. The boys at this age often didn't know how to hold back. Nishue ended up with a bruised and swollen face and went straight to the teacher to report the incident the next day. Those boys were known troublemakers who didn't care about consequences. Calling their parents didn't help, and the homeroom teacher could only give them a half-hearted scolding. But this incident was like pouring boiling water into an already bubbling pot. From then on, those boys bore a grudge against Nisushe and swore to beat him up every time they saw him. Nisushe's days grew increasingly difficult. His textbooks were torn to shreds, and his desk was stuffed with garbage. During PE class, no one was willing to team up with him. Nisushe stood quietly by himself as the boys watched him, bursting into fits of laughter. A month later, Nisushe finally couldn't hold it in anymore and told Shugiji. He was, after all, still a child, and he had never suffered much hardship before. Being able to endure it for so long was his limit. But Shugiji was already overwhelmed with worry over her own son's affairs. To her, the grandson born from her son's affair with that mistress was an eyesore, no matter how she looked at him. In fact, Shugiji believed it was because of him and his foxy, scheming mother that the Ni family had ended up like this. Shugiji sneered coldly and deliberately asked him, "Why do they only bully you and not anyone else? You should reflect on yourself and figure out the problem." Nisushe pressed his lips tightly together. The faint glimmer of hope in his eyes was extinguished. 3 days before I transmigrated, he was once again ambushed on his way home from school. This time, he finally fought back. In a desperate outburst, Nisushe threw punches with a fierce, reckless intensity, beating the boys until they were crying for their parents. He even broke the boy's nose. The teacher punished both sides equally, calling it a vicious mutual fight. Nisushe was forced to make a public apology, and Shuguiji was summoned to the school. Shuguiji was utterly devastated. She had spent her entire life as a respected university professor, admired by all. Her son was obedient, well-mannered, and successful in his career. But now her grandson had turned out to be a violent delinquent. She completely lost her composure. Right in front of the teacher, she slapped Nisushe and ordered him to drop out of school. I was so shocked I couldn't close my mouth. A heavy, suffocating anger surged from my chest, making it hard to breathe. I climbed onto my bike, fuming, and shouted at Nisushe, "Get on! Grandma's taking you to teach them a lesson." How dare those bastards bully my grandson like this? Nisushe stood frozen in place. A gentle breeze brushed past his forehead. All his stubbornness, defiance, and sharp edges streamed down his face in shimmering tears. Nisushe's eyes still held sparkling tears, but the corner of his lips gently curved upwards. He smiled. Nisushe refused my grand ambition to stand up for him. He said, "Grandma, you cannot beat them." Inflexible. I tapped him on the head. "I rush up and give them a punch, and you follow behind me and give them the second punch. By the time they react, I will fake a heart attack, lie on the ground, and start convulsing. That will scare the hell out of those little brats." Nisushe couldn't help but burst out laughing. He shook his head. "I've already beaten them. I beat them really badly. Today, those guys avoided me whenever they saw me." Nisushe then took the initiative to pick up my cloth bag. "Grandma, let's go home." I nodded. I was really lucky. Before I transmigrated, I had a well-behaved and considerate granddaughter. After I transmigrated, I gained a well-behaved and considerate grandson. My feet pedaled with vigorous energy, and the bicycle sped up, as if it were about to rush straight into the brilliant sunlight at the end of the road. I raised my voice and shouted to Nisushe, "Let's switch schools. We won't go to this crappy school anymore." "All right." After returning home, I began searching for a new school for Nisushe. I had no idea about school atmospheres or teaching resources, but I wanted Nisushe to attend a good school, even if it was expensive. But where would the money come from? I scratched my head in worry, feeling as if the white strands of my hair had become even whiter. "Host," the system's voice suddenly chimed in. I thought for a moment and finally decided to say to it, "Stop calling me host. It feels so strange. Why don't you, like Nisushe, just call me Grandma?" The system fell silent for a moment before speaking again. "I have something to tell you." It began explaining in a calm, steady voice. According to the original plot, Nisushe was supposed to earn her first pot of gold after escaping from her torment. However, since the plot has now deviated and Nisushe is going to school instead, I've determined that you lack the means to make money. To ensure your livelihood, I applied for a sum of funds from the main god, 100,000 yuan, which has already been deposited into your account. Stop collecting bottles from now on. What a heavenly windfall. I wished I could pull the system out of my mind and kiss it hard, and that main god, kiss them both. I sighed with gratitude. You guys are truly doing charity work. The system responded in a completely unrelated manner. This family really can't function without me. I nodded vigorously. In the second month, Nisushe successfully enrolled in a prestigious middle school. This was the best choice after my comprehensive consideration. It was a day school, 2 kilometers away from home, and reportedly had a decent school culture without any school bullies or troublemakers. But even if there were, I would beat them so badly they would be picking their teeth off the ground. After sending Nisushe through the school gates, I waved at him and turned around to head towards a trash can. The system started screaming in my head again, "Stop it, stop it." It was fuming with anger. "You have money now, so why are you still picking up bottles?" "You don't understand," I replied. "I grew up in hardship. Back then, my family couldn't even afford food, and saving became second nature. Seeing bottles and not picking them up just feels like losing money." I sighed. Even my granddaughter used to pick up plastic bottles and bring them home when she was little. System. I reached out to grab a cardboard box, but a dirty little hand suddenly pressed down on it. My gaze shifted downward. It was a thin, frail little girl, around 8 or 9 years old. She trembled as she looked up at me, showing a fawning smile. "Grandma, can I have this?" The system chimed in. "Didn't expect someone to compete with you for this job." "Wait," it suddenly said. "This is the female lead, Ruan Susu." In the original storyline, Nishushue's life was often described as being in hard mode. He went through countless hardships, eventually becoming an evil yandere. I'm not entirely sure what that means. Anyway, he became gloomy, extremely ruthless in his actions, vindictive to the extreme, and feared by everyone who crossed his path. However, Nishushue's evil grandmother, on the other hand, did not suffer much. The system explained, the author simply forgot about her while writing. Me. As for the female lead, Ruan Susu, her life began as a nightmare, set to hell mode. A gambling father, a weak-willed mother, and a troublemaker younger brother. She was treated like a slave from a young age, forced to take on all the household chores. When she was 8 years old, her parents died in a car accident, and little Ruan Susu was passed around between relatives, relying on others to survive. After a year of such treatment, her relatives discarded her like garbage and sent her to an orphanage. At the age of 19, she was given as a gift to Nisu Shui, who had already become a big shot, and became entangled in a tragic love affair with him. Me? Poor girl, looking at Ruansu's big black and white eyes, my heart softened into a giant loaf of bread. By the time I realized it, we were already sitting on chairs, eating hamburgers. Ruansusu gobbled it down, her cheeks puffing up like a hamster's as she mumbled unclearly, "Grandma, thank you." I pulled out a napkin and wiped the sauce off the corner of her mouth. With a serious tone, I said, "If someone else offers you food, be careful. Do not trust people so easily, especially men." Ruan Susu nodded eagerly. Perhaps it was fate, but the next day, I ran into her again. I still could not resist and ended up buying her fried chicken. Since then, Ruan Susu and I agreed to meet every other day. Another month passed, and on the day we were supposed to meet, Ruan Susu was late and still hadn't shown up. My heart was in my throat. I anxiously grabbed my bike and started pushing it as I walked, speaking to the system along the way. "Do you think something happened to her? Could it be her relatives?" System. "You are overthinking." "Turn around." "Grandma!" I turned around. Standing across the street was the tiny figure of Ruan Susu, dragging a large plastic bag that was nearly half her height. She waved at me with all her might. The sunlight cast a golden glow on her messy hair. Ruan Susu quickly ran over, wiping her hands on her clothes before carefully pulling a banknote out of her pocket. 10 yuan. She solemnly placed the money in my hand, smiled brightly, and spoke softly, "Grandma, this time it's my turn to treat you to a burger." I looked at her radiant smile. The wind was too strong. It was really too strong. It made my nose sting so much. At that moment, I sniffed and said to the system with determination, "Do you think she will like me as her grandma?" "You want to adopt her?" The system asked, "Is it because she looks like your granddaughter?" I took a careful look at Ruan Susu and shook my head. "No, she doesn't. My granddaughter will always be my granddaughter." The system said, "From an economic perspective, having one more person will increase your burden." I knew that. I was living a tight life and didn't have the ability to let Ruan Susu and Nisu Shui live a life of luxury. Yet I still couldn't just stand by and watch as she walked step by step into her predetermined, tragic fate. Even if that tragedy eventually led to great wealth and prosperity, their lives, both hers and Nisu Shui's, were burdened with far too much unnecessary suffering, crafted purely for the sake of the story's plot. Otherwise, I simply couldn't understand how Ruan Susu's parents, who were so poor their yearly income was less than 10,000 yuan, would end up dying in a car accident. I bent down and leaned closer to Ruan Susu. I retold the story of her original life in another form, narrating it to her as if it were just a tale. I asked her, "If you were the female lead, what would you choose? Would you go with that grandmother?" Ruan Susu didn't hesitate for even a second. Her dirty face suddenly lit up with a bright smile, revealing her small, glutinous rice-like teeth. She said, "I choose grandma." The process of adopting Ruan Susu was simpler than I had imagined. When a few of her relatives heard that someone was willing to take over this hot potato, they eagerly agreed, fearing I might change my mind. The first thing I did after adopting Ruan Susu was to give her a new name. "This name is strange, don't you think?" I said to the system. "It sounds more like a type of food than a person's name. Because it's too frivolous and too perfunctory. Names always carry a parent's hopes and blessings for their child. What kind of parent would want their child to be soft and mushy like a croissant?" As the system spoke, it suddenly changed the subject, a teasing smile in its voice. "Oh, by the way, in the original storyline, your grandson's pet name for her was Susu. He'd say, 'Susu, call me husband and I'll give you my life.'" Me? I had goosebumps all over my body. This name had to go. After much deliberation, I finally settled on the characters Jinyue, Ni Jinyu. I hoped that she would be as resilient as bamboo and as unyielding as a stone. I hoped that she would always have the courage to overcome any difficulties. "Grandma, do we really have to do this?" Ruan Susu, no, Ni Jinyu pouted her chubby little face, looking troubled as she asked. My response was to straighten her outstretched arm and adjust her horse stance to make it more stable. "Lower your center of gravity. Pay attention to your footing," I said, signaling Ni Jinyu with my eyes. "Throw your punch, ha!" 2 days ago, Ni Jinyu officially started school. She was 9 years old and in the 3rd grade. In the original storyline, Ni Jinyu was always the poor kid who got bullied at school. By the time she was in middle school, some boys even used joking as an excuse to touch her chest. And Ni Jinyu didn't even realize that this was harassment. So, on the 3rd day after adopting her, I sat her down and explained some basic physiological and hygiene knowledge. I wasn't particularly educated, so my explanation was clumsy and halting. In the end, I simply opened the computer and watched some online videos with her. If something like this happens, Ni Jinyu blinked her big, clear black and white eyes. "Don't worry, Grandma, I'll definitely tell the teacher." "That's certainly one way to handle it," I said. "But sometimes teachers might just brush things off. If someone bullies you or touches you inappropriately, you need to do this. Ha! And punch him right in the nose." Nose. "Do I really have to do that?" Ni Jinyu listened carefully, her expression puzzled. "But Grandma, Auntie, and my teachers always said that girls should act like girls. Be quiet and ladylike." I lowered my eyes and gently stroked her hair. My emotions were a tangled mess, coiling together into a heavy, incomprehensible feeling. The system, ever timely, attempted to explain these emotions to me, saying something about societal norms and conditioning. It wanted me to repeat its explanation to Ni Jinyu, but my memory isn't great. I didn't retain what it said. In the end, I could only share my own hard-earned wisdom from decades of experience. People bully the weak and fear the strong. If you're gentle and understanding, you'll be taken advantage of until there's nothing left of you. My mother was a widow, and in my memory, she always had a loud voice and was a fierce and impetuous person. Everyone called her a shrew, a tigress. As a child, I didn't understand why she was so fierce, but when I grew up, I became her. I've set up stalls and run businesses. In the business world, in society, no one will give you an advantage just because you are easy to talk to. The only thing gentleness and understanding will get you is more and more bullying. Many people despise us for being so aggressive, but it's only through being fierce that we can roar loud enough for the world to hear us. Ni Jinyu was confused and clenched her fists tightly. She firmly threw a punch and shouted, "Ha!" As soon as her voice fell, the door opened. Ni Su-shui walked in with his school bag on his back, casually greeted us without saying anything more, and then turned to head back to his room. I watched his back and couldn't help but wonder to myself, what's up with this kid? Was it because I had been busy with Jinyue's matters lately that he was upset? Thinking about it, it made sense. Ni Shui had been an only child for over 10 years, and now, with a new younger sister suddenly in the picture, it was understandable that he might not be used to it. The next day, I specifically prepared a table full of his favorite dishes, but Ni Su-shui still behaved the same way. He thanked me politely without a single flaw in his manners, but there wasn't any trace of emotion on his face. After he left, I immediately went online and searched what to do if siblings in a 2-child family don't get along. The more I read, the more alarmed I became. Suddenly, the system spoke up. Actually, I think, rather than worrying about whether he dislikes Ni Jinyue, you should be more concerned about something else. What is it? Whether or not he likes Ni Jinyu. I choked on a mouthful of water, almost losing my breath, and coughed for a long time. Nonsense! They're siblings! The system paused thoughtfully for a moment. But they're the male and female leads. They were originally supposed to be husband and wife. What if they're attracted to each other? Spending so much time together, it's not much different from childhood sweethearts. My eyes widened as large as bronze bells. The system continued. Besides, Ni Shui is 14, right at the age where feelings of love start to blossom. His current cold and strange behavior might be because he's realized his feelings for Ni Jinyue and is avoiding her out of emotional conflict. I was speechless. For the next few days, I nervously kept an eye on Ni Shui, and sure enough, Ni Shui said he wanted to tutor Ni Jinyue with her homework and called her into his bedroom. With a click, he locked the door from the inside. My heart nearly leapt into my throat as I tiptoed closer. Loud music was playing in the bedroom, seemingly to cover something up. I held my breath and precisely captured a word in the blurry and noisy sound. Like. It was Ni Shui's voice. I gasped sharply, a chill running through me. It felt like someone had smashed my brain with a hammer. A relentless buzzing filled my ears. Weakly, I slumped against the door and slowly slid to the ground, burying my face in my hands in despair. After much deliberation, I decided to take the initiative and talk to Ni Shui directly. Do you have a girl you like at school? I asked. Ni Shui shook his head. I drew in a sharp breath, rubbing my face nervously. You don't like girls your own age? Ni Shui's eyes widened slightly, looking rather astonished. Grandma, not too long ago, you told me to focus on my studies and not fall into a premature romance. Why are you asking this now? Yes, I told you not to date early, but I never told you to have improper thoughts about your own younger sister. You rebellious grandson. I pressed my hand against my mouth as though I had a toothache. After a long silence, I said euphemistically, You're getting older now, and there are boundaries between boys and girls. In the future, when you tutor your younger sister, don't close the door. At your age, you might have a lot of thoughts, but one wrong step can lead to a lifetime of regret. Don't do something you'll end up regretting deeply. The system was speechless. Is that what you call being euphemistic? At this, Ni Shui's eyes widened even further, as round as bronze bells. He pointed at himself, opened his mouth, but for a moment, he couldn't manage to make a sound. I secretly asked the system, would saying this be too harsh for him? Ni Shui shot up from his seat, his face flushed red with disbelief. You think I like my sister? I immediately responded. You might have mistaken some ambiguous feelings as affection. Admitting your mistakes and correcting them is what good kids do. Saying it all in one breath left me exhausted. Ni Shui broke down. How could you think that? I fell silent for a moment before spilling everything I had overheard. Ni Shui stayed speechless for a while, clutching his chest and taking deep breaths to calm down. Forget it. There's no point in hiding it from you anymore. He spoke softly. Grandma, your birthday is coming up. Jinyu and I wanted to give you a gift. I did mention my original birthday once. I struggled to say, but you've been acting really strange these past few days. Strange? How? You've been walking around with a stiff face all the time. Ni Shui suddenly understood. He put on that aloof, sharp expression again, his features icy and cold. Ni Shui said with composure, I look cooler this way. Me. Although there had been a bit of a misunderstanding, the weight in my heart was finally lifted. Spring passed, autumn came, and leaves fell to the ground. Ni Shui successfully got into the city's top high school. During these days, I rented a cart and set up a stall selling jianbing guozi and grilled cold noodles. Though it was hard work, the income was surprisingly good. Ni Jinyue would run over to help me out as soon as she finished school. Under the moonlight and the frost-heavy air, Ni Jinyue leaned against me, dozing off. I pedaled the cart, softly humming a tune to her. Ni Shui stood behind the window, looking down at us with his head lowered, his lips tightly pressed together. 2 months later, he handed me a bank card. Grandma, there's 500,000 yuan in here. I was terrified. Where did this money come from? Did you rob a bank? Ni Suchet quickly shook his head. I earned it from trading stocks. Stock trading was a foreign concept to me. Ni Suchet gave me a simple explanation, but I still barely understood it. The system said, he is the male lead. His business acumen is naturally extraordinary, and making money comes as easily as flipping his hand. That may have been true, but I still couldn't help worrying and repeatedly reminded Ni Suchet. He lowered his long lashes and pressed his lips tightly together. I just don't want to see you work so hard. My heart suddenly softened into a puddle. This child. Out of the $500,000, I took out $100,000 for household expenses and saved the rest. Several years passed. Wild geese flew south time and again, and the wheat ripened with each autumn. Ni Suchet eventually sat for the college entrance exams. After the exams, the admissions office called. Ni Suchet remained calm and composed, telling the person on the other end that he would consider it carefully. The moment he hung up, he suddenly jumped up, his mature and collected demeanor cracking open. Ni Suchet looked up at the sky and shouted, overwhelmed with excitement, I scored 710! I'm the top scorer! In just a few steps, he dashed over and hugged me tightly. I sniffled, my eyes growing misty. In the original plot, Ni Suchet didn't even take the college entrance exam. When others were full of high spirits, he had already spent several years struggling in the business world, becoming gloomy and unpredictable. But now, he was shouting, jumping, and cheering, brimming with life. This was how he was supposed to be. This was the life he was meant to have. During the long summer vacation, 2 unexpected guests arrived at our house. Mom. The man smiled at me ingratiatingly, then turned to Ni Suchet and said, Son, you're already so grown up. Come here, I'm your dad. I kept a straight face and asked coldly, What are you two doing here? Mom, what kind of question is that? Ni Chang'an frowned in displeasure. Do I need a reason to come back and see my mother and my son? The woman next to him, Hei Ting, waved at Ni Suchet. Suchet, don't you recognize your dad and mom? Why are you just standing there? Ni Shui's expression was calm and indifferent. I don't have parents. Ni Chang'an acted as if he hadn't heard and eagerly looked at me. I heard Suchet is the top scorer in the province this year with over 700 points. He even made it onto TV, as expected of my son. He cleared his throat. Mom, I know what happened before was my fault, but look, I'm back now. I've earned some money and we can live like we used to again. I have a business partner who really likes Suchet. As it happens, his son's grades are terrible, so I thought next year Suchet could take the exam in his place. Nonsense, I yelled, my voice loud and firm. Are you out of your mind? That's illegal. Ni Chang'an awkwardly scratched his head. Then maybe Suchet could help promote their Lantai Academy instead. Lantai Academy? That's a notorious internet addiction rehab school. At that moment, I understood everything. Ni Chang'an's mouth was full of talk about family, but his heart was all about business. I stood up abruptly and pointed a finger at his nose. You ungrateful bastard. Back then, you ran off without a word. Now that my grandson has achieved something, you shamelessly show up again. If you want to pull off these shameless schemes, do it yourself. Get out. Ni Chang'an's face darkened. Don't take the hard way when the easy way is right in front of you. I smirked sarcastically. How did you even get back into the country? Ni Chang'an was still listed as a debtor at the Public Security Bureau. Years ago, he fled abroad to avoid paying back his debts, taking out a large loan before leaving. That left Ni Suchet and me to deal with debt collectors pounding on our door. As expected, panic flickered across Ni Chang'an's face. I shouted to Ni Suchet, call the police. A debtor who had secretly returned to the country like this would be arrested and punished. Don't. Ni Chang'an was so frightened that he grabbed my hand. Mom, we're family after all. Suchet can't have a father who ends up in jail. Ni Chang'an didn't know that a month ago, Ni Suchet had already been completely exposed online. A bunch of people had cursed him as the son of a debtor, and abusive language had been endless. Later, someone familiar with the situation came forward to reveal the truth, finally clearing Ni Shui's name. I gave him a smile. Yeah. Ni Chang'an let out a long sigh of relief. Fine, I won't call the police, but I have one condition. I took out a document I had prepared long ago. Sign this. It was a parent-child relationship termination agreement. Ni Chang'an was stunned. Mom, what do you mean by this? You two as parents are no different from not having any at all. Nisushe's legal guardian was changed to me a long time ago. I dusted off some non-existent dust from my clothes. Sign it. Otherwise, I'll call the police. Ni Chang'an's face turned a mix of red and green in an instant. He looked like he wanted to hit me, but under the glare of Nisu Shui, who stood taller than him and stared daggers at him, he ultimately gritted his teeth and signed the paper. What bad luck. Didn't get any benefits. Watching Ni Chang'an climb into his car, I snapped a photo of his license plate and decisively called the police. The sound of police sirens buzzed in the distance. I handed the paper document to Nisu Shui. You're 18 now. This is the real coming-of-age gift from Grandma to you. I looked into Nisu Shui's clear, amber eyes and solemnly said, freedom. Time flew by. After going to university, Nisu Shui still maintained the habit of coming home once every 2 weeks. Ni Jinyu had started middle school, and her grades were among the best in her class. On my 56th birthday, Ni Jinyue bought a cake decorated with an assortment of fruits and placed numbered candles on top. A lotus-shaped candle bounced and twirled as it played the birthday song. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at me expectantly. Grandma, quickly make a wish. I made a wish sincerely. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Nisu Shui. He raised a large gift in his hands and smiled brightly at me. Happy birthday! Just as I was about to speak, a sudden pang struck my heart. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I clutched my chest as everything went dark before my eyes. In the final moment of my fading consciousness, I heard something heavy hit the ground, followed by frantic footsteps and anxious cries. Grandma! 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 Strange. Why were there 3 voices? Why were there 3? In the endless darkness, a figure flashing white light stumbled and scrambled, desperately rushing towards me, wanting to grab a wisp of my soul. Her face, it was so familiar. I stared at her, dumbfounded. As soon as I opened my mouth, tears fell. Ming Ming, why are you here? My granddaughter has a very nice name, one her mother chose from The Great Learning. It's called Ming Day. Her nickname is Ming Ming. Originally, I called her Xiao Ming, but after she started elementary school and began learning English, she wouldn't let me call her that anymore. Why is she here? I grabbed Ming Ming's hand, but my faint fingers passed right through her transparent palm. I couldn't hold on to anything. I asked her repeatedly, my voice trembling, "Didn't you go to college? Why are you here? Where is this place?" Ming Ming's face was streaked with tears, and she tightly covered her mouth. "Why won't you speak? Say something." Ming Ming opened her mouth in vain, her lips trembling uncontrollably. When she finally spoke, it wasn't her familiar voice, but the electronic tone I knew all too well. Grandma. It felt like lightning struck me, pinning me to the spot. I could only stand there, stunned, repeating, "What's going on? How could this happen?" Memories came flooding back like an opened floodgate, drowning me completely under the torrent of the system's mechanical voice. It said, "Aren't you afraid of any consequences? Did you even think, what if failing the mission means death? What then?" It said, "Don't dig through trash bins. Don't pick up bottles." It said, "I applied for a sum of funds from the main god. Stop collecting bottles from now on." It said, "Is it because Ruan Susu looks like your granddaughter?" She said, "Grandma." I had a granddaughter, even older than Nisu Shui. When she was little, she loved eating hamburgers. When she was little, she would help me pick up bottles to sell. When she was little, she liked dressing up as Sun Wukong. When she got a summer job, she bought me a smartphone. And when she grew up, she got into college. My granddaughter. She passed away in a car accident. Everything stopped that day. It felt like a massive blade had split me in half. Her parents cried like their souls had been torn apart. But as I looked at the bloodstains at the scene, I suddenly saw her small figure. Illusory, real, transparent, and vivid, she was running toward me. She said, "Grandma, Grandma, I want a hamburger." I held her in my arms. Since then, I had forgotten many things. I forgot what day it was. I forgot whether I had turned off the gas in the kitchen. I forgot who the person standing in front of me was. I forgot about the news of Ming Ming's death. I had a granddaughter. She was in college. She would be back soon. Maybe this weekend, maybe next holiday, maybe during winter or summer break. She would be back very soon. She loved eating hamburgers. I wanted to buy her hamburgers. A plastic bottle was worth 3 cents, and a pound of cardboard was worth 70 cents. I wandered, stopping and starting, picking things up and dropping them again, leaving behind a long, winding trail of tears. I had a granddaughter. She was in college. She would be back soon. She loved eating hamburgers. I wanted to buy her hamburgers. The traffic roared past. I won't let you die. At that moment, I was already on the verge of death, yet I suddenly heard this voice. Faint, crackling, filled with the sound of electricity. As I closed my eyes, an electronic voice screamed hysterically, "Find her! Use my points to exchange for her life!" I opened my eyes. What had just happened? I forgot it in the blink of an eye. I only felt as though I had taken a nap. I had a granddaughter in college, and she was about to come home. An electronic voice sounded, "Greetings, host. I am System 27353, and I am here to serve you wholeheartedly." I stared blankly at Ming Ming. So there never was any benevolent main god doing charity. Not following the plot and all that money, it was all exchanged with your points. Ming Ming's shoulders trembled. She raised her head, her face already a tear-streaked mess, yet her voice remained the same monotonous, electronic tone. This family can't function without me. I broke down, squatting on the ground and wailing uncontrollably. You silly child. What will happen to you after using up those points? Will they punish you? Have you been wronged? Ming Ming shook her head. Grandma, I'm fine. She tried hard to muster a faint smile. I earned a lot of points, really. I'm not lying to you. I can't just stand by and watch you die. Grandma, I have a job now. With a wave of her hand, an electronic voice sounded again, confirming points redemption, curing the host's illness. Doctor, how is my grandmother? She's fine. The examination shows she's healthy. The fainting might have been caused by temporary low blood sugar. You should keep an eye on her. I opened my eyes. The glaring white fluorescent lights of the hospital stung my eyes, causing tears to stream down my face. Ni Shui and Ni Jinyue were by my bedside. When they saw me open my eyes, they leaned in nervously, full of concern. Grandma, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Do you want to eat something? In my ears, the electronic voice chimed in again. Just a little more and I'll have enough points to redeem a human identity. When that happens, hey, I'm going to go on a spending spree with Nisu Shui's money. I'm buying a luxury sports car. I blinked. Looking at Nisu Shui and Jinyue, I gave them a warm smile. I had the best 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson in the world. I was the luckiest old lady in the world. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It brings me inspiration to create more interesting stories.